Hello, my name is Emmett Peters. I am the team lead and full stack developer for the Ledger Lifeline group. To get started on this application walkthrough, we'll begin at the main index page of the application, which is the login page. All users, new or existing, will have to come through this screen to then access the system. Here we have the main and simple login model with the login credentials here. The login button will be disabled until those credentials have been input into these fields. A forgot password option is here for any existing user who has happened to forgot their password. They can go ahead and change it through this process, which we'll see in a moment. And there's also a button down here for new users to register to the system. So if we are a new user coming to the system, we'll come here and then we'll be brought to this very basic and simple user registration where they'll enter their basic details like their name, their address, date of birth, their email, and then a password required to log into the system. And then for extra security measures, we require the users to choose a security question and then supply an answer to that question. For the passwords, every password requires certain conditions. For security reasons, we want the users to have strong passwords and not something simple like 1, 2, 3, 4. So we make sure that they first meet these conditions and then confirm that password to make sure that they know what password they have just given, to then submit a password that is linked to their account. So if we go ahead and start typing in a password, you will see how once these conditions are met, they will go from red to green, indicating to the user that they have met those conditions. And as you can see here, I've met all the conditions. The border initially was red around this input field, as well as all of the conditions. And now they are all green, and so is the border. And as you can see here, the confirm password input field was once disabled, and now it is enabled once this password, a strong enough password, has been entered. And then so while you are typing, this password field down here, similar to the initial password field, will dynamically check what the user is inputting and make sure that it matches the password given up here. And then once it does match, the color changes to green and it gives you the message matches password. We'll go ahead and back out of that. If I am a user trying to log into the system here, as mentioned before, the login button will be disabled, but once I put some credentials into these fields, you will see that the button is now enabled. If I try to enter the system with an incorrect username, I'll be given this message here, and I will be given the same message if I try to enter the system with an incorrect password. We purposely make this message ambiguous, only letting them know that either or is incorrect. We don't want to specifically indicate to the user that one or the other is either the correct or the not correct one, because for all we know, it could be an unauthorized user trying to access the system, and they could be trying to test certain inputs. So we don't want to give them that information. For incorrect password attempts alone, those attempts are counted against the user. 3 of those incorrect password attempts will eventually suspend the user for a 1-day suspension. The only reason why it's password only is because if we do it by username, if the user enters a username that doesn't exist in the system, we can't, of course, suspend a user that doesn't exist. So we can only really suspend a user if they've given the correct username, but then given an incorrect password. Then we can find that user and suspend them for suspicious activity for incorrect password attempts. So let's say I'm one of a user who has forgotten their password. I get this message. I don't want to get suspended, so I'll go ahead and just go to the forgot password page. Similar to the login process, this is another check that the user will enter their, instead of now password, they'll just enter their email, make sure the 2 credentials check, and then once that is met, we'll move on to the next check. And of course, if I supply an incorrect email address with my username, I'll be given the appropriate message, and of course, it's ambiguous, just like the incorrect login attempt. Works the same way, so I won't really go and show it working for the incorrect username. So we'll just go ahead and pass this check and move along. Now for an extra layer of security, the user will be given the security question that they chose before, and then they must supply the answer they gave. And then once they're in this screen, the user will enter a new password. It's the same exact process as we saw for the new user creation. So I'll go ahead and type in a password. Now for what I'm doing right now, I'm currently typing in a old password for this user. And if the user attempts to create a new password that was the same as an existing password, let's say 2 or 3 passwords ago, the user will get this message telling the user that the new password cannot be the same as any previous passwords in their history of used passwords. But if I go ahead and create a new one, I'll get the appropriate successful password creation message, and I will have a new password for the system. And there we go. We get the message password change successful. Excuse me. And then they'll be prompted to log back into the system with this button, which will navigate them back to the login page. Now to show a user actually getting suspended, we'll go ahead and use this user and suspend them. Get the first incorrect, second incorrect, and third incorrect attempt. As you can see here, that user was found in the system, and it lets them know that they are now suspended. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page so I don't accidentally mess up the new password I made and suspend myself. Okay, I'm now in the system. So as you can see here, all users, once brought to the system, they are met at the dashboard page, which kind of acts like the main home page for the application once you are logged in. Every time a login is successful, you'll be given the appropriate message letting you know that indeed happened, if it wasn't already obvious enough that you're in the system, and then just an extra welcome to the system. Here we have all of our financial ratios. That's very important for all accountants to, you know, keep and pay attention to and look at. We tried to add as much CSS styling and animation to it as we could just to make it pop out and make it very visually appealing and stand out to the accountant because of course they need to be seeing these things and they need to be constantly viewing it. That's another reason why it's on the dashboard. It's very clean and concise and easy to see. Um, on top of the CSS animations, we just made a color coordinated system where the ratios in good standing are in green. The ratios on the verge of good and bad standing are in yellow. Those are the ones that the accountants need to look out for. And the ratios in bad standings, which need to be fixed immediately, are the ones in red. Additionally, we have also added another visual indicator with the arrows, which just goes along with the colors. So green is pointing up, yellow is pointing to the right, and red is pointing down. There is another item on the dashboard, which is just this notification bar for pending entries. As the admin, this isn't really as useful to us as it is accountants and managers, because the admin does not have access to the general journal as per the project requirements. But of course, the admin can still reach out to the managers and let them know that there's a pending entry. On every page, there is also this email functionality. Here, if we go ahead and click it, we can open up this drop-down, which we are allowed to select users. We can also type in here. If we have a long list of users, we can just find that user. You can select multiple users as well, or if you want to, you can just do all at once. For this email feature in particular, it was initially required on only the chart of accounts page, but we went ahead and just put it towards all other pages as it seemed the most convenient for the user. And then with this email feature in particular, the admin user, which I am now logged in as, can only email managers and accountants, and then manager users can only email admin and accountants, and then of course accountants can only email managers and admins. And then of course you have the option to give a subject, so we'll say test email, and then a message, we should say testing. I can just say admin. I'll go ahead and send that. While that is being sent, we'll go ahead and another thing to point out, a notification is given here just to let the user know that their email was sent successfully. And then We'll go ahead and check these over here. We have a pop-up calendar that can be used like any other calendar, and it's draggable as well. Go ahead and select all the months here. Go by decades with that. This, you can select the year as well. And then you just close it by clicking the icon again. Same thing with this calculator. It is a pop-up in the top left corner, and then it is also draggable. You can manually type by clicking the buttons here, and then you can clear that, or you can just type it on your keyboard on the computer. And then you close it as well. Here is that email that we just sent, and all of those users that I emailed to were all linked to my email. And as you can see, all 4 of that was sent to this email. Every email is given this first name of the application, letting the user know that it came from the application, and this is our application email that we generated. And then this just tells you who the user was that emailed you. If I come back here, I can quickly show the animation again, just to give you one more viewing of how, the numbers count up, because they do kind of go quickly, but watch out for this one, just to show that, they do dynamically change. As you can see here, it counted up from red to green, and that's pretty much how the animation works. When this is working in real time, and if it's a much larger, functioning application with multiple users putting in journal entries at once, these numbers will constantly be going up and down, and then you'll be seeing them change if they change color, and they'll have the same animation. As the admin user, I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the admin only page, which is this first users page right here. So as you can see, you're brought to this main table of all the users in the system. Every user has their username listed first, which can be clicked, and you can view all of the user's details. So in case the user needs an name change, an address change because they moved, date of birth may be wrong for some reason, or they want to change their email, or they may have forgotten their security question or answer, the admin can come here and first view that and then also edit it if they need to. We can also set suspensions. This is the admin user that we tested the suspension. So as you can see, they're already suspended and they're given that day suspension. We can decide to extend that if we want as the admin, and we can save that, or we can just go ahead and remove the suspension, and that user is no longer suspended. And as you can see here, there is no longer any suspension for them. I can also change the roles. So I can change this admin's role to manager or accountant if I wanted to, or I can make them inactive. Now the active status is another check for the system. If a user is either suspended or inactive, then no matter if they give the correct credentials, they would not be allowed to log in. The active status, if they're inactive, kind of acts as an indefinite suspension, whereas the regular suspension will be an automatic suspension, or it will automatically update itself once the time has gone out. But with this active status, it is up to the admin to come back into the system and reactivate their account once they are no longer inactive. There's also an additional email feature here. This will just email the one user. In case you've got a long list of users here and you just want to find that one user, it's very convenient to just email them right here, especially if you're editing their details and you want to tell them alone that you've edited their details. And it'll just send straight to them. Up here we have the ability to add a new user, which will just bring them to the same register page, and we can actually go ahead and we can just say a test user. So we can say random accounts. Then we can search for a state. We are in the state of Georgia, so we'll just say Georgia. Oops. And then we'll give a zip code. We'll just give it 0. You can choose a date of birth. We'll just say they're born today. Email, I will give my email. And then a password. We'll choose a security question. And then we'll submit. Let it submit, give it some time. And then the admin will be brought back to the user's page, and they'll be given this notification letting them know that the user is created, and the admins, all admins in the system, will receive a new user creation request. So before we go check that, we're going to go and view expired passwords. So every password that is expired in our system for each user will be displayed here. So far, for our testing purposes, and after we reset our database to clean it out, the user I'm in right now has only had the expired passwords, but if there's multiple users, they would be listed here as well. Then we have their encryption of each password. Of course, we don't want to show the actual password value because that is sensitive data that a user may use for several other applications, and we don't want that information to be given away. And then we have the date at which and time at which it is expired. Every password has a 90-day expiration date set every time it's created. And so once that 90 days is up, it'll be automatically put here. Or as you saw earlier, if the user goes through the forgot password process, it'll be put here. So let's go ahead and check the email. So I got and as you can see, I have two emails because the admin account and my admin account are both linked to my email. So I got, as I mentioned earlier, this is sent to all admin users. So I can go ahead and accept this here, and I'll be brought to this page where we'll assign them an appropriate role. We'll just make them an accountant for now. Go ahead and accept, and then once they accept, the admin will be brought back to the application through the dashboard page. I can go back to this email, and I can try to do this again with this other admin, but since it is already handled, we'll be given this message. User request has already been handled. Click below to return to the app. And like before, it'll just return them straight to the home page. If I come back here, I should get an email for that user I created. And as I showed earlier, the user that I created, I used my email. They'll be given their username of what to use, and of course their password, but that is up to them to make sure they know, and they'll be able to be brought back to the login page. Now, since I'm already logged in, I'll just be brought right back to the dashboard. So if I try to click this, I will, stay on the dashboard page. But that's pretty much if a user isn't logged in, they'll just be brought to the login page through there. As we come back here, we can refresh the page, and we can see now that we have that random account down here. And that's pretty much it for the users page. So we'll move along to the event logs. Here is our event logs page. This shows the main events made to all of our accounts in the system, all of our users, and then the login attempts made for each user. So this accounts log is the one that pops up first. It is usually the one that's most important that we need to keep track of for all the account information and details. As you can see here, we have in our first row the account's identification with its number and name, the field that was changed within the account. So we have the account's balance and its debit side being changed, what it was initially from, what it is changed to, who updated or caused the event. So in this case, it looks like it is a journal entry being made, and the managers are the ones who approve journal entries, which posted to the account. And so that approval triggered this event, and so it would have been made by the manager. And then we have the date and time that it was made. And you can scroll all the way down through here. You can also even see where the accounts are created down here, where all the fields are being changed from none to a certain value, except for some of these, because those, depending on the creation, will remain none. You can also search for some of these accounts. So if I want to go to like utilities expense, I can see all of the utilities expense activities. I can also even check for the number as well. So I can go 40050 for telephone expense as well. We also have our users log, and you can see that's the random account I just made that was posted here. Same thing with the accounts. You have the identifier for the user, the fields changed from and to, who approved the user creation. So it was that admin. Looks like it was with that email instead of mine. And then the time and date. And then we have the login attempts. So for every user in the system, each one has a unique login attempt counter, and that is listed here for every attempts made. There's also a row here to tell us whether it was successful or not. So as you can see here, the 3 admin unsuccessful login attempts can tell us that that is the reason why they were suspended, given the 1-day suspension. And then there is a date and time as the other logs for every event. That's pretty much it for this one. I'll move down to the help page. This help page is a page that is shared for all users. It's just a collection of very basic and brief and concise information about the application for all users to come to if they're confused or need a little bit of information about, what all is involved with the application. I'll come over to our chart of accounts, which is another page like the dashboard, and the help page, which is shared for all users. Here you have the main table with all the accounts in it, as seen here. Over here in the number with the blue color and underline, you can view the account details as seen by the tooltip, and you can see all of these details first initially disabled, and this was the main look for all users, except the admin here has that edit button down here. But you can just see all of the details from here that aren't displayed because there isn't enough room in the table. There's also the active status as well, who created it, time of account creation, time most recent update, good stuff like that. The account in the ledger can be navigated to from this button, but we will save this because the name here does the same function. I want to show that working. And then there's another way to view the account's event logs by itself through this. So like I did with those other accounts where I searched their name and the number and it showed only their account details, you can also do the same thing pretty much from this button in this event log from the chart of accounts, which just shows the account details for this one account. And of course, cash is pretty large event log because it's the most active one. And as I said earlier, you can edit the details. Obviously, you can't edit all of them. These are generated. It must stay the same. If I change their account category, these will change as well. And then the balance will not be able to be edited. It'll be generated based off of these numbers and calculated. I can also change the active status of each account. So for example, the accounts payable account. But if I try to deactivate an account with a balance greater than 0, I'll be given this appropriate error message. Account balance is greater than 0 cannot be deactivated. So every account, as seen here, that is greater than 0 cannot be deactivated. That is because there is still, stuff that needs to be handled in that account. Before we go over to the ledger from this, I will show you how a admin will add an account. So we give a name, we could just say test account, say this is a test, and then we will give it a category. Now from here, everything else is disabled until these 3 are given because the rest is dependent upon, especially this account category. So we just made sure that they choose this first. So we can say like an expense, and as you can see, the number was dynamically generated. Expense is normal side as debit, and the user cannot edit that because that is how it's supposed to be automatic like that. Liabilities, you can see the number has changed now, and its side has changed. You can see it now has a ability to select count subcategory. So does an asset. But if I try something like an expense, an equity or revenue, I cannot give it a current or long-term subcategory. Go ahead and just add this at equity, something like that. You can see it's got the name changed, no subcategory. You can also give it an initial debit and credit, which will then calculate its initial balance. And of course, an initial balance is going to be equal to the total balance once it is initially created. And so it gives values for both of those. So this side is normal as credit. So if I go ahead and add to debit, you'll see it's now in the negatives. And then I can add to credit and then balance those out. I can also continue to add to credit. It now has a greater initial balance as seen there. I'll go ahead and put those back to 0. The order, is up to the admin, so it is up to them to know what order to give this account. Then a statement is selected, which just links each account to each statement, which we'll see those in the managers and account view. And then the admin can just go ahead and add this in an extra additional comment. Let's see, there's something else I'm missing. I'll go ahead and give an order to be safe 10, and then we can go ahead and submit this, and we'll see the account being created. So it says new account test account created. We can go ahead and look for it. As you can see, it is right there. I can also filter by amount if I want. So if I want to say, oh, I want to look at every cash or every account that is equal to cash or greater than, I can just type cash as balance in here at the minimum. And then every account will be that is equal to cash or greater than will show here. Now, if I want to trim this down and say only from cash to service revenue, I can include service revenues amount in the maximum. And as you can see, cash, office equipment, and service revenue are there. The contributed capital was greater than service revenue, so it does not meet the maximum and minimum. And then also you can filter these accounts by the date they were created. So if I go to like a very early date in the future, those won't show up, of course. And then if I go to a date in the past, very far in the past, like November 1st, those won't show up. All of these were created pretty much on the same day because we had to reset our database and clear out some corrupted data. So I can, if I just go like, within from this week to today, then those will show up. Obviously, if there was a lot more accounts being created, within weeks apart, months apart, years apart, the date filter would be much better. But, they're all from the same day, so there's pretty much not much filtering being involved there. But as you can see, if I go too far in the future with the from date, it still filters. Okay, and now I will go to the ledger, but I'll go through the clicking of the name, which will take you straight to ledgers. So this will take it to just this chosen account in the ledger. As you can see here, its number has populated into the search bar. That is how we get from chart of accounts to the chosen account. It'll take its unique number, populate in the search bar, and search for it. Whenever you come to the general ledger, it'll look like this. It'll show all of accounts. All of these accounts have been condensed and compressed into their like very thin and skinny cell. This is purposeful because if all of these were open like this in their tables, you would have a lot of clutter, too much information at the pages once. So we just made sure to close them all, condense them all, and the users can find the account they want to view and then just click that and then see the history. So every account will just have its number, its name, then total balance for basic information, and then to view additional details, I can just come here and view all those details. We'll get more into the details of this ledger because as you can see here, the post reference is not clickable for the admin because they can't go to the general journal, but it will be for the managers and accountants, so we'll save all that functionality for them. There's also this button down here just for quick and easy access back to the chart of accounts, and that's pretty much for the admin view. So we'll go ahead and log out and log in as a manager. We will do the rest of this as only the manager view. I know there is also the accountant user, but the accountant user and manager view are pretty much the exact same. The only difference is involving the pending entries. And as you can see here, I can now click the pending entries and come to this pending entry. The only difference between manager and accountant is this little functionality right here. So before that, I'm going to go ahead and just explain the journal entry and what it looks like and why it looks like that. And then we'll go ahead and show the manager's ability to handle the entry. So you have the date here of when it was created. Then you have the status. You have for pending only, it's just these two. If I go to like an approved entry, you can see here that the manager who handled it, whether it's approved or denied, they will be listed here. If it's a denied entry, there will be a reason given. So it says this was a test entry to showcase entry creation. We come back here to pending entries. We have the type, whether it's closing, adjusting, or regular. The creator of the entry, so this can be either a manager or an accountant who can create these entries. You have the accounts that were either debited or credited in the entry. You have here first the debit account, which is then separated from the credit accounts, and then also the credited accounts are indicated by its indentation here. And then you have the debit amount here, and then all the debit amounts respective to their accounts here. You also have the description as to why the entry is made, and then there will be some source documentation added to it. Now for this entry, I know that there was no source documentation as closing entries do not require that. So we'll go ahead and first show the model of the manager handling this, and then we'll go to an account that actually has source documentation. So this is the model. This is the only difference between manager and accountants to approve or deny entries. So they can either approve it, submit, or they can reject it, and then they must give a reason for rejection, which will show up like the other denied entries. But we're going ahead and move on from that. Here we have an approved adjusting account or journal entry. You can see here, different from the denied entries and pending entries, there's actually post references. That being because a denied entry is not posted to the general ledger, and a pending entry is still waiting to be handled. So of course it would not automatically be posted. So you can just click on one of these numbers, and similar to from the chart of accounts, it'll take you to the general ledger, populate the search field with this unique number, and search for that account. So we'll go ahead, and if I go with this caret, I can go from oldest to newest. This automatically, every tab here, whether it's the entire history, denied, approved, pending, it will go from newest to oldest. But if I hit the caret here, it flips it and goes from oldest to newest. So down here, this one has source documentation attached to it, as it is a regular account and regular entry, and regular entries do require source documentation. So here is just 3 examples of some types of files that can be added. These are required for the ability to attach documentation is added because the accountants or managers need to view source documentation, whether that's transcripts or receipts, or like a spreadsheet of some financial statements or some transactions, which is important for each entry. So we go ahead and we can check a picture, which this is just a random graph, but it could be in a real scenario, a picture of a receipt, or you can have a PDF of a printed transaction, or you can just have, like I said, a Excel sheet, which we just put our Gantt chart in here. But this will automatically download to the user's computer as so. If I want to search these entries, I can search for let's say everything to do with prepaid rent. Oh, I guess with the prepaid word, it also show prepaid insurance. So every prepaid account will come up here. I can also do just every cash. So we got cash here, cash, 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 so on and so forth. You get the point. And then, the dates and then the min-max filter, they work the same as chart of accounts. I go ahead and show the window here. Let me go fix it back of adding an entry. So as I mentioned before, regular requires everything. So it has an error message listed here just to let them know that they must input something. You have the ability to add files. I can add several files like that. And then just go ahead and remove them. And then an adjusting and closing entry does not require them, but they can still choose to add a file as so. Then you just add a description to say this is a test. You can add an account, like a cash account. Now, since cash is debited, I cannot choose it for a credit account, and I can also not double debit it. So if I try to search for cash again, it won't show up. And this works the same thing for trying to double credit it. I can remove them from wherever I want. I'm going to go ahead and choose cash, add a cent, choose the next one, just add another one. If I go up to an amount that are not equal, to amounts that aren't equal, I will get this appropriate error message saying balance is not zero. Total of debits must equal total of credits, and then so I'll go ahead and fix that. The reason I am doing an adjusting entry is because every adjusting entry and every closing entry, I'll just be doing the adjusting for now to save time, but those will give an email notification to all the managers in the system, letting them know that either an adjusting or a closing entry has been entered, and then that they must handle it because those are very important. So we'll go ahead and submit, give it some time to submit, and then there it is. We'll get the notification that the journal entry has been submitted. If we come back to our dashboard page here, we see that there are now 2 pending entries. We can come here and we can see those 2 pending entries there. If I come back here, I can see I've got the email saying that a new adjusting journal entry has been submitted. Please review as soon as possible. And the manager can either go into the system themselves or they can click this link here and it'll take them straight to the general journal. And you can see that pending entry right there. I'll come back to this page here. We can go ahead and deny this since this is just a test. We'll reject it, say this is a test, and submit. We'll get the appropriate notification letting us know that it was successfully rejected. And as you can see here, there's the reason that we just gave, which this is a test. Now, before we approve this closing entry, we're going to go ahead and look at our financial statements. As you can see by our history, we've had already multiple closing and adjusting entries made. We just did that initially to test it, make sure it works, but I went ahead and made a reverse closing entry so that we can see some more values in stuff like the income statement and statement of retained earnings, as those are zeroed out, as the revenues and expense accounts are zeroed out, and then those end up being zero, especially for this solved problem alone. And then of course, the asset turnover is zero as there's no more revenue accounts as they're zeroed out. But the net profit stays the same after the closing entry because the net profit margin ratio is based off of pre-closing amounts. So come back to the trial balance here. So it is up to the user to select the type, as they should know, depending on the period that they're in, whether it's a regular, adjusted, or post-closing. Since we are in adjusted but not post-closing yet, since we haven't submitted that new closing, we'll go ahead and say adjusted, and then choose the as of date. We'll just say today. And as you can see, we have all of the accounts with amounts that aren't zero in the system, and then you have them balanced down here. Come to the income statement. For every income statement, it is defaulted to the last day of the year, and then the user just inputs the year they want to search the income statement for, and that is how each income statement is generated. So say 2024. As you can see here, we have our service revenue with its total revenue as it is the only revenue account. Then we have all of our expenses with that totaled up. The difference between the two, we get our net income down here. We can also generate these documents with this button here after they have loaded in with the input. Give it some time, and it'll be generated as so. If you want to view the file first before choosing these options, you can click this, and the file will show up here. As you can see, it's got the appropriate title with the date. Then it has all the information that we just went over. If I want to print it, it'll open up the same view pretty much, but then automatically open up the printing view for the user. We can also email it, which will just email the file straight to the user who generated the document. And then we'll get a notification as seen here. While that is emailing, I'll go ahead and just select the download file and it'll download to our computer as seen there. If I come back to our email, back out and see this, you can see that a income statement, financial statement has been generated. It allows us to view it like as seen before, and it attaches the file to the email. I can come back to the balance sheet with an as of date, and you can see all of the assets, both current and long-term, with its total down here, and then equities and liabilities with their total down here. And as you can see, this is 26,795. This is 26,795. So they are balanced. The accounting equation is equal, and we're all good with the balance sheet. And then we also have the statement of retained earnings for the period ending the inputted day. And you can see the retained earnings here. We have the beginning balance, which was zero for the company. We added the net income with a total net income, no dividends, so no subtractions made, and the ending balance pretty much equals the net income. And of course, with the balance sheet, income, and trial balance, all can be generated with this button down here. That's pretty much it for all the financial statements. So we'll come back to the general journal, to the pending entries, and go ahead and approve this closing entry. All right, there we go. We get a successful message similar to the denied entry one. We come back to our dashboard. We can see that our net profit margin, as I mentioned before, is the same. Asset turnover is now 0% because the revenues have been zeroed out, and that would be 0 for the asset turnover. We can come to our trial balance. We can now make it a post-closing. We can see that the numbers, where there is now no longer any expenses and revenues, there's only the retained earnings with the liabilities, with the contra asset here, and then the assets. And now the amounts are still balanced, but less than before. The income statement, which is just revenues and expenses, is now zeroed out because those are both the revenues and expenses are zeroed out with the closing entry. And then we have our balance sheet down here, which still remains the same because it's assets versus, or total assets equals total equities and liabilities, and that is still balanced. And then our statement of retained earnings is zeroed out. So that's pretty much it for the Ledger Lifeline application system. Thank you for watching this quick walkthrough of our application. And thank you for your time and your lessons in this semester.